Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. When discussing the fall of the Qing dynasty, one cannot avoid mentioning a key figure, Empress Dowager Cixi. Though she came to power at a time when the Qing dynasty was already in decline, she became a pivotal figure in the dynasty's eventual collapse. The rise of Empress Dowager Cixi seems illogical at first glance. She was originally just an ordinary concubine in the palace. So how did she leap from being an inconspicuous palace maid to the pinnacle of power? Did Emperor Xianfeng not foresee her rise to power? The truth is quite different. Emperor Xianfeng's judgment was not as poor as one might think. In 1861, Emperor Xianfeng passed away at the Rihe Palace, leaving behind his 6-year-old son, Xichuan, and a Qing dynasty in turmoil. On his deathbed, Emperor Xianfeng entrusted the young emperor to 8 of his most trusted officials, hoping that they would help stabilize the government and restore the Qing Empire's fortunes. However, what Emperor Xianfeng did not anticipate was that within less than a year, all of these 8 high-ranking ministers were outmaneuvered by the 26-year-old Empress Dowager Cixi. The fate of the Qing dynasty ultimately fell into the hands of a woman. By all logic, these 8 ministers must have been shrewd and experienced, with the skills and wisdom to assist the emperor and stabilize the situation. So how could a young woman easily take their place? The reason for this lies in the fatal mistake these ministers made. They underestimated Empress Dowager Cixi's cunning and ambition. At the time, the Qing dynasty faced internal strife and external threats, with the people suffering and the situation chaotic. The defeat in the Opium War had left the Qing government humiliated, and the Treaty of Nanjing had pushed China to the brink of semi-colonialism. Emperor Xianfeng was well aware that the Qing Empire was on the verge of collapse. But the internal and external contradictions wore him down, and he was never able to effectively turn the tide. In 1860, Emperor Xianfeng's health deteriorated further at the Rihe Palace. On his deathbed, he confided to his trusted confidant, Suzhan, saying, "Once I am gone, the situation is beyond saving." Suzhan comforted him, saying, "Your Majesty, please take care of your health. The Qing Empire still needs your wise leadership." But Emperor Xianfeng knew his time was short. And he was not only worried about the future of the country, but also anxious about whether his son would be able to inherit the throne. At this point, his thoughts were no longer focused on saving the Qing Empire, but on whether he could smoothly pass the throne to the young crown prince, Xichuan. In the autumn of 1860, Emperor Xianfeng anxiously paced in his chambers, frequently stopping to speak to his eunuchs, saying, "What should I do? What should I do?" The eunuchs were unsure how to respond and could only lower their heads in silence, as the air in the palace was heavy with a sense of impending doom. After careful consideration, Emperor Xianfeng made a decision: he would follow the example of Liu Bei from ancient times and entrust his young son, the 6-year-old crown prince, to 8 ministers he trusted. Emperor Xianfeng's original intent was good. He hoped these ministers could assist Xichuan and stabilize the country. But little did he know, the ministers he selected would make a critical error that would doom the Qing Empire's fate and lay the groundwork for Cixi's rise to power. According to historical records, in the summer of 1861, Emperor Xianfeng, gravely ill, summoned the 8 ministers, Suzhan, Du Han, Jiao Yueying, Mu Yin, Huang Yuan, Duan Hua, Zai Yuan, and Jing Shou. He appeared exhausted and, enduring his pain, told them, "I entrust the young crown prince to you all, hoping you will do your utmost to assist him and keep the Qing dynasty stable." Suzhan, with tears in his eyes, was the first to kneel and vow, "Your Majesty, rest assured, we will do everything we can to assist the crown prince and secure the state." The other ministers also pledged their loyalty, vowing to serve diligently. Meanwhile, in the Imperial Harem, the favored concubine, Empress Dowager Cixi, already harbored greater ambitions. She knew that Emperor Xianfeng's death was imminent, and she needed to act swiftly to secure power in the Qing Empire. Upon hearing that Emperor Xianfeng had summoned the ministers but had not called for her, Cixi couldn't help but sneer. She understood that Emperor Xianfeng had already grown wary of her. But by now, he was so ill that he no longer had the energy to deal with her. Cixi knew that to win this power struggle, she could not rely solely on herself. She needed to find reliable allies. Thus, she secretly reached out to Prince Guangxu to test whether he was willing to support her. Yisun, too, was unhappy with the fact that Emperor Xianfeng had overlooked him in the matter of the crown prince's regency. As a key official in the court, he felt slighted by being excluded from this crucial responsibility. For this reason, he did not hesitate to accept Cixi's offer of cooperation. On August 22, 1861, Emperor Xianfeng passed away, and the entire nation mourned. The young Tongzhi emperor ascended the throne. And the political situation in the court changed dramatically. Although the 8 ministers appeared united, each harbored their own ambitions. All eager to consolidate power for themselves. They were so busy guarding against one another that none took Cixi seriously. After all, in their eyes, Cixi was just a palace woman. How could she compare to them? However, Cixi had been quietly scheming. She worked to maintain her alliance with Empress Dowager Cixi, while secretly building her own power base by gaining the support of key court figures. In the autumn of 1861, as Emperor Xianfeng's coffin was being escorted back to the capital, the atmosphere in Beijing was tense and everyone was on edge. During this time, Cixi had already quietly arranged everything. She knew that to seize power, she must first gain control of the imperial seal. At that time, the seal was being kept by Empress Dowager Cixi. One morning, Empress Dowager Cixi visited Empress Dowager Xian and pretended to express concern, saying, "Sister, the situation in the court is unstable now, and we need more power to protect the emperor." Empress Dowager Xian, innocent at heart, did not suspect any ulterior motive from Cixi. Cixi promised that once she took power, she would ensure Xian lived a life of luxury and honor. After some persuasion, although Empress Dowager Xian hesitated, she ultimately handed over the imperial seal to Cixi for safekeeping. With the imperial seal in hand, Cixi immediately contacted Yisun and straightforwardly said, "The time has come." Yisun understood immediately, and they exchanged a knowing glance. Their understanding unspoken. In the days that followed, Cixi accelerated her plans. She secretly strengthened her control over the capital's army and sowed discord among the 8 ministers. Soon, Suzhan and Mu Yin had a heated argument at the court meeting. Though the other ministers tried to mediate, cracks began to appear in their unity. Meanwhile, Cixi secretly plotted behind the scenes, calming Empress Dowager Xian while discussing with Yisun how to completely bring down the 8 ministers. To lure the ministers into a trap, Cixi and Yisun decided to design a scheme. At a court meeting, Yisun suggested a grand escort ceremony for the late Emperor Xianfeng's coffin and proposed that the 8 ministers personally escort it. The 8 ministers, caught off guard, readily agreed to the proposal. In early October 1861, the 8 ministers escorted Emperor Xianfeng's coffin back to Beijing from Rihe. Along the way, they chatted and laughed, unaware of any danger. However, they did not realize that Cixi and her trusted men had already set an ambush behind their convoy. A few days later, when the escort reached Beijing, Cixi and Yisun's plan was set into motion. The capital's guards suddenly turned into Yisun's men, who had already received secret orders and were waiting for the arrival of the 8 ministers. "Suzhan, there's a problem," a soldier hurriedly reported. Suzhan, panicked, asked, "What is it?" He quickly summoned the other ministers to discuss countermeasures, but it was too late. As they were deliberating, Cixi's personal guards burst into the meeting hall. surrounding all 8 ministers. Suzhan angrily shouted. How dare you? We are the trusted ministers entrusted with the emperor's legacy, are you plotting a rebellion? But the guards showed no mercy, pinning him to the ground. At that moment, Yisun coldly stepped forward and said, the late emperor entrusted the crown prince to you, but you have betrayed his trust and plotted treason. Today, I am here on the orders of Empress Dowager Cixi to arrest you. Suzhan angrily retorted, Yisun, who do you think you are? How can a palace woman give orders to us? Yisun sneered and pulled out an imperial edict sealed with the imperial seal. Throwing it before them. This is the emperor's decree, already sealed with the imperial seal. Your fate is sealed. Yisun ordered, take them to the dungeons for trial. With that, he turned and left, leaving behind a group of stunned officials, unable to resist. The 8 ministers were swiftly imprisoned and soon sentenced to death or exile and removal from office, accused of treason. Panic spread throughout the capital, and Empress Dowager Cixi successfully seized control of the entire court. Some historians have commented that, in retrospect, when Emperor Xianfeng entrusted his young son to the 8 ministers on his deathbed, it was not because the ministers were incompetent or foolish. In fact, when Emperor Xianfeng chose these ministers, they were all capable men. However, they made a fatal mistake, they underestimated Cixi's intelligence and determination, believing that a woman could never thrive in the power struggle. If Emperor Xianfeng knew of this, he would surely feel deep regret and sorrow. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.